speaking with Omar Morel. I get that right? Very good. Director of Government Lending, Sunwest Bank here in Southern California. Omar, thank you very much for joining A Coleman Conversation. Best part of my week, I get to talk to outstanding professionals in our field, do a little in-depth. We've gotten great feedback, so thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Looking at your bio, we got to start. I got to start with this. Veteran in the Air Force. And what's interesting about this, I've talked to a lot of people who joined the service after 9/11. You were in the service on 9/11. Tell me about that, man.
I was in service from 98 to 04. So 9/11 was kind of right in the middle there. And, it's always interesting, right? People talk about, where they were that day. Right. And, I was there. So I served, I was stationed in Offutt, Nebraska, was airborne maintenance on the RC-135, which is a reconnaissance jet that's based there in Nebraska. And so, that morning was, something else. That's a longer conversation. But what I will say is this, is the joke about the Air Force is we're civilians in uniform, right? And I think sometimes we kind of wear that badge proudly. But that moment, that day, to see everybody just snap together, the mission was the most important thing. All of us, very quickly do everything we needed to do to get, I think we got, 3 planes up in the air that, within a very short window of time. It was certainly scary and surreal, but, especially when President Bush came in and, he ended up landing there at Offutt. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was, I think the strangest thing was, you're so used to, being there, and we were in a skiff. So, concrete walls everywhere. There's no windows to be found. So, the only way to get some fresh air is to go out to the smoke pit. Right. And, smokers, non-smokers alike, we're literally just out there, just, staring at the sky. Right. And it's, there's nothing going on up there. And then all of a sudden you see a plane start, showing up with some fighter jets attached to it. And it's like, what is going on? It was definitely,
And that was Air Force One?
That was, yeah.
And you didn't know it was coming in?
I think at some point we started hearing rumblings that it might be happening.
Wow.
And then eventually we saw him come in. But, it was, that out of body kind of very surreal, what's going on type of thing. So, yeah. And then of course, we're all stuck around the TV like everyone else, right? Staring at the screens, wondering what's happening. I think fully expecting this was, this is the beginning of more, right? So you're also kind of staring at the sky, wondering if something's coming your way, So, but definitely, proud moment, like I said, to be a part of all that.
What I liked what you said is, as a team, you guys came together very, very quickly, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Handful of us, it was go get the jet ready, right? And again, my job was more inside the plane, right? So kind of managing. I like to say I was like IT in the sky, if you will. So my job was, make sure those computers are ready, spare parts are loaded up, all the software is there, running through checklists on multiple planes. And then we had a group of folks that was run home, get your go bag, be ready to be in the air, say bye, you don't get to say bye to your family in those types of situations, but more often than not. So, I was part of the group that was there getting ready to get those guys in the air. And then, we sent a few, had a few take off that day.
How did that experience impact you in what you do today for a living?
That's a great question. I think, what I was, it's interesting. I was the smart, lazy kid in high school, right? That's kind of how I ended up in the Air Force, right?
You were not alone.
Yeah. I was, nowadays there'd be, IEPs and all kinds of stuff for a kid like me, right? But, it was, I was the guy to show up, and it was just it was like the work was a little bit easy, and, but the grades weren't there because I just wouldn't do the work. Right. And so, going to the Air Force, you pick up a lot of discipline, right? Number one. And I think number two, the thing that really stands out is you get, the core values of the Air Force, right? It's service before, integrity first, service before self, excellence in all you do, right? It's just like there, right? It's, kind of with you throughout. And I think, one of the things that's kind of part of that and encapsulated that is the value of helping others, right? And that's why I ended up being drawn to, kind of by accident, but once I was in the SBA world, there's, what we do on this side of commercial lending is we really get in and help business owners, right? There's a value, there's an honor in being able to sit across from somebody and say, let me hold your hand, let me walk you through what it's going to take to get you on the path to your dream. Right. And a lot of that is built in the service, right? You're looking out for, right. In my world, I don't have, the working end of a rifle pointed at me, but, the detail matters, right? If the tech manual says we're supposed to turn this screw to so many pounds per inch and you come up a little short or you overshoot it a little bit, people die, right? And so you're always looking out for the team around you, right? And there becomes a value in taking care of others.
Awesome. Yeah. Great answer. Yeah. So you get out of the service, and what happens next?
So got out of the service. I was, I still remember, this was, at the beginning of being able to send somebody a picture with your cell phone, right? My older brother was selling real estate, and he said he was sending me pictures of his commission checks. And I was like, oh, I want that. So
for a smart, lazy kid, you're smart.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I like that number. And so I came home, learned how to sell, it was residential real estate. I was successful, but miserable, just wasn't happy doing it. Mm-hmm. And so from there, that little launch pad started us on hey, let's go start a business. Let's go do something else. Right. And so we always had that very entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't grow up with, to say I didn't grow up with much is an overstatement. Right. So,
good for you.
My brother and I, it was always very bootstrapped, find a way to get something to work. And our timing was fantastic. We started our first business in right about the middle of 2006. It was the best time ever to to start something new. And so, had some initial success, and then obviously everything that happened. And, it was a scramble for a few years, just trying to find, just trying to survive, trying to find the way, trying new things, trying different things. And then my brother and I ended up starting another business. We started a residential brokerage.
Okay.
And again, found some initial success, and we found out pretty quickly we were pretty good at being brothers. We were terrible at being business partners. So
again, not a new story. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a little slow, but I get there eventually. And I called a buddy of mine who I just called him. I said, hey, I need, I just kind of need something to do while I figure out whatever it is that I'm going to do next. Right. I'm just not sure. So, I just, something to keep the lights on type of deal. And he was working at a firm, and he said, I'm actually going back to SBA lending. Right. I always joke at the time, I didn't know how to spell SBA. Right. So, sure, that sounds interesting, whatever. I'm going to be there for 6 months, and, I'll go off on my way after that. And I still remember I sat down, it was with a local great loan broker here in Orange County. And they set me in front of a computer with an Excel screen, right? Dropped a bunch of tax returns in front of me, showed me how to do a basic cash flow. And I just tell you, Bob, I think almost immediately it just made sense. Right. And I think it was that, kind of looking past the number type of thing is like, oh, there's people behind this. Right. And so I had that kind of immediate connection with it. And, spent I don't know, gosh, I can't remember how long. I think it was about 1.5 years or 2 with that group, much longer than I ever expected to. And then started talking to the banks that we were brokering deals to, and got my first job as a BDO from there.
Good for you. What does the director of government lending at Sunwest Bank do?
So I took over the group about a year ago, and we're the GGL group for Sunwest Bank. So we're primarily tasked with bringing in external business, right? Those companies that we want to eventually grow into, the CNI and larger relationships for the bank. And then, of course, also we're taking in and helping our bankers win and retain new business, right? SBA is a great product for that. And so we've kind of historically been mostly a 504 shop.
Okay.
We're excellent at getting 504s done quickly, working with the CDCs and getting those across the line. We offer just about every use of proceeds on the 7A product. Here in California, we really like the state guarantee product. That's another, not a lot of states don't have that. We love that product here in California. And then we like USDA as well. Because so much of our footprint overlaps with that USDA map.
Startup construction,
we're the challenge with construction in general, right? With SBA is everything is so over leveraged. So when you take on the construction risk, you take on the leverage risk, and then you take on the startup risk. It's something we're probably going to stay away from, right? Unless it's that really strong guarantor. It makes a ton of sense. But generally speaking, we've shied away from that end of the spectrum.
Omar, you and I are neighbors. We read a lot of bad press of California. Yeah. However, property values in Orange County gives you a pretty strong 504 loan portfolio, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so it works great here in California. Again, our footprint, though, is not only here in California, but Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, northern Florida. And so we've got to be able to do more than just 504, right? And that's what's we're opening up the product suite, if you will, and starting to look more at the 7A product, both for real estate and non-real estate.
How do you work with brokers and other lenders?
We're pretty comfortable working with brokers and other lenders. We fit our credit box. I like to say we're in that A- to B+ kind of range, right? We're to your point, about startup construction. Yeah, I might not do that type of loan. There's plenty of lenders that'll do that, but I'm doing the deals that make sense, right? I'm doing. Yeah.
I apologize. I know I have a bad habit. I cut people off, but I'm excited for the conversation. Define a B+ credit person. FICO score. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's someone where you've got 1 year of cash flow.
Okay.
There's some credit dings on the personal, but there's a story behind it. It makes sense. Right. It's somebody that's fully invested in the business. The deal that I'd rather take a little bit of a tougher deal where, they're all in on their business, in other words, leaving money in the company, than the one that, hey, we've pulled, $3 million out of the business. And by the way, can you loan me $500,000? Right.
Yeah.
So hold up a second.
Where'd all the money go? Well, yeah.
That's right. They've got a Ferrari in the lot and no cash in the bank. Right. To me, that's a little bit further down the stream. So for me, it's more, when I talk that B+, it's, the numbers are maybe, the trends are in the right direction, but they're doing right by their business. I'd much rather take a risk on or take a chance on somebody like that than something that's, maybe similar metrics, but, those things aren't there.
California has what, the 6th largest economy if we were our own country. Tell me about that state program.
So state programs really a great product. So I like to think of it as it's a 7A product because it really looks like a 7A, right? It looks and smells like a 7A. So we get an 80% guarantee instead of a 75% guarantee. Okay. And the most important thing is that the money has to stay here in the state. So I can use it for real estate. I can use it for working capital. I can use it for all of the uses of proceeds that I can with the 7A, as long as the money is staying here, supporting employees in the state of California. The challenge with it, where we won't use it quite as aggressively as a 7A product, is the the guarantee, it's, SBA, you get paid, and then there's a potential for that repair or denial, right? So we kind of understand that process. With the state, it's a little different. It's the deal goes bad, you liquidate, and then now you start chasing the guarantee after that. So the way we use it is we use it for something that kind of, is more of a credit enhancement to a conventional deal versus this is an SBA deal and we're trying to go laterally, if you will.
I've been reading about and talking to the lenders, state of California, city of LA, and the Olympics for vendors, special financing programs. Are you involved in those?
So I haven't. No, I haven't seen any of those. We do have quite a few of those infrastructure contractors. We like those guys, right? Because that's quite a bit of federal funding that's going to be coming in. Federal and state funding that's going to be coming in over the next few years.
Obviously, you can do those 7A. Yeah. Tell me about your 7A credit box.
So 7A credit box were, again, all uses of proceeds. I'm more of a balance sheet guy, right? And I think you kind of pick that up when I talk about our credit box, right? So, not necessarily, hey, we want to see, 1-to-1, 2-to-1 leverage or anything like that, right? But it's again, are you leaving money in the business, and then are we partnering with you on that? So, from there, we're very similar to others, right? We're looking for that 1.15 cash flow coverage. In the most recent year, we want to see positive trends. We want to see that equity injection go into, going into the project, whether it's because you're leaving cash in the business or it's something new. And then generally speaking, we're doing all uses of proceeds. I'd say the one that we're not as good at is the BizAcs, the pure business acquisitions, because you've just seen so many lenders go 95% lending, right? And maybe I've got to get with the times, but I've just never been super excited about that type of aggressive advance on a BizAc.
And that's why SBA said, hey, they've tightened the screws on that very much. So.
Yeah,
very good. What is in the Western United States, and so predominantly 504, you're growing 7A. What specific industry niche is your bank excited about?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a specific industry niche. I mean, I love a manufacturer, right, like anyone else does. I love a distributor like others do, right? I love the professional services. It's more the stuff that we're not necessarily comfortable with, and not because we think the industry is in trouble or not. It's just maybe we just don't have the expertise. So things like assisted living. We just as an institution, I've done plenty of those deals, but as an institution, can I really push that on my credit partners or others in the bank to get a comfort level if they don't have that background? So it's more of the stuff that we don't do. And the big one, like I said, is assisted living. But we're perfectly comfortable with hospitality. We're perfectly comfortable with gas stations. So we will look at those at the special use products or the special use assets. The one that we've gotten a little away from is car washes in California, and really just not because, again, they're great businesses, but the land value on those have just increased so much that again, you're kind of going back to that. Are we over levering the project, right? So SBA support or not, right? It's at some point how sustainable is is kind of that rapid increase.
California economy, what's your attitude? How do you feel about it?
I'm very curious to see what the new budget that we're passing, and I haven't had time to really look at it, but I'm concerned about the debt load here in California. Now, underlying economic activity and what we rely on here in California, very bullish on, very excited about. I'm not overly concerned. I'm more concerned about, okay, we've got a budget problem, and how is that going to, play into the, to the overall cycle of cash.
Yeah, very good.
But there's this wonderful thing about California, right? It's huge and it's blue and it's off to the left, right? Nobody's building that way. right? And so that's the one benefit that we kind of have over so many other states is that, our land value is always going to be, is always going to remain strong, right? So, from a real estate perspective, you can get a lot more comfortable, lending into real estate just simply because of that limited resource.
I love it. SBA. You found this niche. Tell me you're hitching your star to the SBA lending career track, and tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, like I said, I think for me, I've been very fortunate to work with and learn from really smart bankers, right? And I've just, whether it was when I was young in the Air Force or afterwards, I've always kind of sought out, who's doing this better, who's doing this smarter, who's doing it different. So I've been very fortunate to be around some great bankers. And so, I feel like I've gotten a large enough breadth that I could, if I wanted to, get out of SBA. But, at my core, I just enjoy helping that small business owner, right?
Well,
again, because I there's still that connection back to when I was struggling, right?
Well, I definitely hear your passion on that, and your passion and working with your borrowers. I think that's very commendable. Go ahead and finish your thought, please.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, the other piece of it is I also like solving puzzles, and oftentimes SBA is a puzzle, right? There's no deal like the last one. Everyone is different, and just yesterday, I won't go into detail, but yesterday one of my BDOs was calling me saying, well, the broker's asking for this, and here's how they want to structure the deal, right? Because of this problem. And I'm just sitting through with him, and I'm like, well, what if we did this or did this or did this? Let's give them the option. And next thing the one ask, and we don't know if we're going to get there. We don't know if we're going to be able to help them. What you can do between SBA, between 504 and 7A, between state, whatever it is that we offer. Oftentimes you can say, okay, here's this one really difficult challenge. We don't know how we're going to get there, and suddenly be able to provide, 2 or 3 options, another way to look at it. I enjoy that part of the game, part of the job.
I think you answered the question that I have on my list is, what is your unique selling proposition to working with you and Sunwest? And I think you just answered
it. We're not box checkers.
Okay, good.
And I get that, and in SBA, you kind of have to be, to some extent, you got to be a box checker. That's right. It's the joke I've always told, prospects, COIs, otherwise is, SBA is a government program that works, but it's still a government program, right? And so to me, that's the power in it. That's what's exciting about it, right? Is sure, I've got to check some boxes and I've got to make it fit within the box. But there's so much creativity that's available to us, right? As we approach things, and our credit box is not, this very neat, check these 5 boxes and you've got an approval, right? It's very much every deal can stand on its own, and we've got this, we don't have this. Okay, what's another way to look at it? And that's usually where we win deals, and are able to provide, whether it's a better rate or a better service or a better experience, wherever the case may be, we're able to do that for our borrowers as a result.
Great spot to end our Coleman conversation. Omar Morel, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate the story. Fascinating about 9/11. I've never heard that from that specific historical viewpoint. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Omar.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Bob.